Hi, I'm Dr. Crystal and this is Dr. Mike.
Hey guys.
And today what we're going to talk about is neuroplasticity. What is it and how is it affecting our lives? So neuroplasticity is a big word to say our brain is able to make new connections. Basic ways we think about this is if we look at a baby slowly learns how to roll over, learns to crawl, stand, and walk. You're like, okay, so that's a baby. What about me? How can I learn? Well, we start to go into that as we learn new skills, whether it be I'm going to learn a new sport or my jobs require me to learn something new, technological. My husband does work in Tableau, so data analytics. So for me, I don't know how that works, but for him, he learns a new skill and how they make updates and how to change and intertwine that into his work. Dr. Mike here is working on his neurology diplomat, so he can go a little bit more into what that actually means with neuroplasticity.
Yeah, so pretty much you covered the most basic stuff, which is neuroplasticity is super difficult to explain. And even though I'm doing the diplomat, there's a lot of stuff that still doesn't make sense because it's very complicated. The nervous system is extremely complicated. You will go into a neurosurgeon and ask him a deep question, even the most basic question. He will have 20 years of experience and he will be like, he will have to think for a moment, even if he knows the answer, just because it's very complicated. In easier terms, anything that you do that requires learning something new automatically creates neuroplasticity in the brain. So like me and Crystal were talking a couple hours ago, and I was telling that people who have problems with their vision, when you take an MRI of their head, they have the chiasm and the optic nerve decreases, but it doesn't shrink. And other areas of the brain develop more. That's why people who are blind, they have insane hearing and insane smell, because they have to not rely on vision like we do, and they rely more on smell and in hearing. That's why you create new neuroplasticity. So the nerves is still there. The optic nerve is still there. It's not completely dead. It just changes their interaction. It's applying on the brain, and it's changing it to more temporal for hearing, balance, and for speech.
Yeah, and one thing we also talked about too is if you've ever watched any of the TED Talks, there is one, I forget his name, but he talks about phantom limb syndrome. So how can someone who is an amputee, whether it be traumatic or whether something else happened that they did have to have that limb amputated, how are they able to feel in their hands or in their legs a burning sensation, a painful sensation? If you're a person who likes to watch Grey's Anatomy, they go through that with Dr. Robbins. She had her leg amputated, but yet she can still feel pain there. The brain is still trying to send those signals to those limbs, but there is no limb to send back, hey, it was hot, I moved my hand, I am burnt. So it goes through that, and the brain's trying to make a new pathway. Well, if there is no limb to send this signal to, then what do I do? And so this researcher goes through and explains that he created a mirror in a box. So if the left arm was amputated, they would stick their right arm in there. The brain is still sending that signal to the left arm, and so now their brain is able to see a left arm, even though there is no left arm there, through this mirror in a box. And so from there, the body's able to heal and figure out, okay, we know it's not there, but we can see a mirror. We can create a new connection and slowly heal and figure out, okay, we need to stop sending a signal to a portion of our body that's no longer there. And so we also discussed how that can reflect in gaming, because Dr. Mike loves to game.
Hardcore gamer. So yeah, one of the things that me and Dr. Crystal were talking is how can we affect neuroplasticity as chiropractors? And we don't directly affect neuroplasticity. So if we talk about different kiddos that have ADHD or they're in the autism spectrum, how can we help them, develop faster? If it's a cognitive function, speech delay, slur speech, balance, how can we help them get there with, the complications they have? So we focus more in the musculoskeletal system. So if we can help the kiddo or adults tone down stress, tone down inflammation, tone down hypertonicity in the muscles, you can be able to do the stuff that you love. Because many times we have headaches, and one of the questions we ask when we have patients that have severe migraines, does it affect your job or your daily living that you don't want to do those stuff? Most of the time they don't want to do their stuff because they're in severe pain. So if you help them take that away, if it's by nutritional stuff, chiropractic, PT, rehab, anything, they can go back to do the stuff they love. So hence creates more neuroplasticity, because you don't have to do something specific to get neuroplasticity. Like every single day you learn something new by visual. So for example, if you are an athlete, and that goes to anything. If you're an athlete and you want to be like, let's say Michael Jordan, you want to watch his videos. What did he do to become who he was? So you see all the plays, you see how he moved and everything, because you're visually learning, oh, he did that. That's kind of cool. I can try that. So that's an external input. You are learning from someone else and you're trying to apply that. And then you can transcribe that in your brain to internal transcription. And that creates neuroplasticity. So not necessarily you have to sit down and read or game or do a sport, but just looking at the TV, sometimes you can be watching a series of anything that you like, that's interesting. You learn something new, that creates neuroplasticity. And before, research said that neuroplasticity was in the early stages, but now it can go all the way to 40s and 50s. You can, because you keep learning. The more you keep learning, the more changes in the brain. So that's pretty healthy with people who suffer from dementia, Alzheimer's. They have all those conditions because they can't create short and long-term memories. So a lot of therapists in the chiropractic world, neurologists, a speech therapist, they work targeting different areas in the brain with specific therapies so they can increase gray matter in those areas, hence, creating more neuroplasticity. So that can elongate. So working with those type of specialists, us as chiropractors, we can get them to the goal they want. If it's a balance issue, if it's a speech issue, toning down the musculoskeletal system so they can do the things they love, and that will hence do neuroplasticity.
Yeah, and the other thing I really like that you said is if you do think about those patients who have Alzheimer's and dementia, if you look at the research they're doing now, they're teaching them like simple things like go give them a baby doll and how to take care of this baby, because their brain is still trying to heal and it's trying to create new connections. There hasn't been, a cure for these things, but they are going along the right path. And then with our kids, we have a lot of overstimulated children where they have ADHD, they're on the spectrum, even just headaches. Lately, I've been seeing a lot of kiddos with headaches. They are either in sports and not doing those sports correctly. They say practice makes perfect, but it's really that perfect practice that makes perfect. And so getting them to know, hey, I know you love that sport, I know you love swimming, but if your coach is saying do it like this, you want to do it like this because that's causing those headaches. And for our other kiddos who are highly stimulated, their brain is just sending these signals and the kids don't know what to do. And so now they're like, okay, well, we want to calm them down. Here are these things to do. We definitely want them to work with those other providers, but chiropractic can help slow down that stimulation. Sometimes it's just a blockage. That nerve signal is just not sending it back. So they're either working on like a dial-up or it's too fast. We haven't even created that type of internet yet. So we want to slow it down because a lot of those signals come from the neck, the cervical spine. So that's where chiropractic can help through those adjustments and help them to kind of tone down. And a lot of our parents will notice it. It might last for a couple minutes, it might last for a couple hours. It depends on how long they've been on treatment. So that's something that I've noticed just with care with the little kids that come in and see me.
Yeah, I think from my part, the reason why I decided to go more into the neuro field, mainly, so like Crystal said, I'm a very hardcore gamer. I would go home after today's shift and I would spend at least 3 hours gaming because for me that's my hobby. That's my disconnect from the world. You know, yours could be just watching a series or do exercise or reading a book. Like it's really, I tell all my patients to not let go of their hobbies because that's their plug from the world and just, you know, completely stress. So having a hobby is very important for me is gaming, and anything that creates engagement, it's gonna create neuroplasticity. But, and I will go in way more detail in the next following podcast that me and Dr. Enrico are gonna have more into the gaming neurology of things. But a very quick intro to that. I was reading a couple articles about a month and a half ago, and they now prove that specific type of games can help kiddos, and not only kiddos but adults, focus specific areas in the brain like a therapy. So if you have a patient that has dementia or has a high risk of dementia, if you can get them to game strategy games, like games they have to think, like Sudoku or like crosswords, things they have to be focused and thinking about it. If they forget that they're doing an exercise and they do it for 2 hours a day, you're making more gray matter in their brain. But calm down, because if you do it too much, it decreases gray matter. So like everything in life, balance. Yeah. Like if you drink too much water, that's gonna be harmful. If you do too much exercise, it's gonna be not good for your muscles and for your body. So it's keeping a balance in between. Okay, how much can I do this without having, you know, something be negative, a negative effect? So that's pretty cool, you know, having gaming into the therapy world or helping people with disabilities or disadvantages or whatever they have, you know, get them in that edge. And not only in, you know, dementia type of world, but just having hand-eye coordination, you know, having that, if people have a dysfunction with the eyes, so they have decreased tracking, they have a eye latency, so you tell them to follow the fingers and they jump the finger without you getting there. They have a problem with accuracy, concentration. This can actually help specific ADHD people that have horrible concentration. I have horrible concentration. So for me, gaming is a good way to keep me aligned and focused. And over the years, I've noticed that I am a very visual person. So for me to learn, I like having something to look at. So is it me just repeating myself and watching a video of myself repeating that? That's repetition. So everyone needs to find their way of learning, and everyone's different. Some will be slower, some will be faster, but you're still creating neuroplasticity. So that's really cool.
Yeah, and I'll say for me, like learning, I'm the same way. I'm very visual. I'm also tactile. So I noticed for a while, like I talk with my hands. So you'll see me moving my hands around. Yep. In my brain, I'm seeing what I'm doing. I'm seeing that adjustment. And it's so funny learning about chiropractic. You learn, okay, neck pain, back pain, that's it. Why would my kid need to go? Why would my kid's young and they're doing sports? Why would I see a chiropractor for my brain, like neurology? Why are we even talking about this? Because the one thing we don't think about with the neck and the back, what are we doing? We're adjusting the spine. But if we dig deeper, kind of, I like to say peeling you back like an onion, deeper down is your spinal cord. If we follow that up, it goes to the brain. So some people have said, you know, I have felt different, I felt better, emotional release. I'm remembering things. Like, can chiropractic help with that? Yeah, it can. It's just how it affects your body. And one adjustment doesn't do it. It can hold out maybe for, I say, half an hour, maybe a couple of days. And then it takes time, because if you think about it, if you've done something wrong incorrectly 20 times, it takes double that to recorrect it. So if you think, oh, well, I've had back pain, we'll go with the pain portion. I've had back pain for 3 months. Well, now it's going to take 3+ months to correct it. I don't have magic hands. I don't think Dr. Mike has magic hands where we can adjust one person one time and you're going to feel better. And I think that's the hard part to realize. Like, chiropractic isn't just one adjustment. Neurology, neuroplasticity, just us explaining it in basic terms, that is not going to be, oh, well, now I understand neuroplasticity.
We're having neuroplasticity right now.
Yeah, we're
just speaking about
it. Just speaking about it. I know we'll finish this podcast and we'll walk out and be like, what I just realized? We should have totally mentioned this and this and this, because it is a whole spectrum. You've got neurologists, you've got neurosurgeons. I'm sure there's more than that they're still researching. We're based over here in Tampa, and they've got an Alzheimer's Bird Institute at USF. And I'm sure that place will be there forever, because they're going to be figuring out the brain. Because as much as they figure out, we figured out this much, that's this much. You can't see, but it's maybe an inch of what they have figured out. And the brain is so complex. There's different areas in the brain. For motor function, for the frontal cortex, so the things that you're I thought that, but I didn't say it out loud. But maybe sometimes you slip and you're like, oh my gosh, that was my inside voice that shouldn't have even made it out to the real world. That's portions of the brain that are working or dysfunctioning, where you did slip out and you're like, I didn't mean to cuss. I didn't mean to say that thought.
Yeah, that happens a lot with people who had patients that had strokes, and their frontal lobe got affected, so they have no filter.
Yeah,
so
there's no filter.
They will say whatever they have in their mind, because they don't have that processing center. And those people are amazing, because they're just their true self.
They
don't
true
hide
selves. They're not hiding anything.
But I think all the patients that I've heard that had a stroke and they had their frontal lobe affected, they will straight up tell me, my frontal lobe got affected with my stroke. I have no filter. If I say something, I'm not trying to offend you. So it's very funny. And going back to something you said about kids learning and difficulty learning, that's why a lot of parents now are doing a lot of homeschool.
Yeah.
Because they notice that their kids are a little slow, or they need a different input, and they switch to homeschool and they do great. There's always pros and cons of everything, but I think that's great, because now you're seeing a different type of teaching, because schools now they're changing, and it's changing for the best. Because a lot of teachers are implementing different strategies so the kids can actually understand, which is great. When I was when I was in high school, I didn't have any visuals other than a PowerPoint. When I went to do my bachelor and my doctor's degree, there were a lot of visuals, a lot of videos, a lot of hands-on. So there's a lot of things changing right now in the educational world, which is great, because you can actually help kids and adults learn better, hence create neuroplasticity.
Yeah. One thing, I want to go back, but that was the perfect ending. But I wanted to go back real quick, because you said the thing about stroke and the no filter. My cousin, I have a cousin who stutters. It was never natural. I believe there's a trauma. We're about the same age. He's one day older. And then I met someone else with a stutter, and I've met a few people. And the one thing that, actually I've met a few people, and the one thing that makes me laugh is they will stutter. But man, either when they're serious or you tick them off, they will say it with a straight face, with no stutter, because they really had to think really hard in their brain. If this person ticks me off, I'm going to say this, no regrets. They will not apologize, because they had to think it over and over and over to know that, hey, I'm serious. I'm going to say it without that stutter, and you're going to know I'm not taking it back. And so when it comes out plain as day and you're like, what happened to the stutter? You know you ticked them off, or they were very ambitious about what they were talking about. And then the other thing you said about education, I have an 8-month-old daughter, and that's one thing I'm noticing is everyone's either doing private school or homeschool. And for me, I was always in large classes. I wanted to be that kid that I could nap just here through 1 year and we're good to go. And no, I had to bust my butt. And it wasn't until chiropractic school, I was the kid with the highlighters. And I started highlighting, and it was actually in neurology, and my neurology.
I was the kid that used colored pens.
Yeah.
So that's me.
My neurology teacher was like, what do all these colors mean? I was like, I don't know, but I'll figure it out. And then I eventually threw out all the colors and kept. Green was important. Orange, I think, might be important. And if I came back with pink after my test, that was on the test. because if I failed that test and I had to take it again, I was going to know the answers.
Oh my God.
But that's where I ended up being. I ended up being that person, and to see that parents are recognizing they teach differently than how we were taught. Students learn differently. My husband loves the new teaching style. I don't like it because it doesn't make sense. So how will our daughter's brain be? Will she have to do private school, homeschool? Will I be able to teach her, or will my husband have to be the one to teach her? Because the core math and all that, I don't get it. He loves it. I'm like, 2 + 2 = 4. How you drew these lines and did this crazy circle and dance to get to 4, I don't get it. But he loves it. He's like, oh yeah, it's simply 4. But our brains are all different. Our connections are all different. How we're going to get from point A to point B, maybe a straight line for others and maybe a curve around. And that's neuroplasticity. Like, it's crazy, it's amazing, and it's also kind of scary.
Yeah, I think the way we'll end this, I think we'll end with this note, finish, like, not diverging, but adding to what you said on when people had no filter and they stutter. The cool thing is, if you have those people sing, they will not stutter because they're activating a different area in the brain, which is a more creative side, and they do it more subconscious. So that's kind of cool that even though you have someone with a speech impediment, they start singing, and because this goes very deep into more neurology, but they affect a past memory when they probably didn't have the speech impediment, so they can sing without having that speech impediment, which is insane. But it's not everyone. But it's cool that you have someone with a stutter and then you hear them sing and they're like singing beautiful with no stutter at all. Look at me, like, just having difficulty right now.
You think it so you do it. You think it so you do it, and
so
that's what happens.
It's great, and I think that will be the most basic way to explain neuroplasticity in a nutshell, but it goes way deeper than what we just scratched the surface. It goes way deeper. If you guys want us to go way deeper into this,
there may be multiple podcasts.
We'll have to divide this in multiple, but that is pretty much neuroplasticity in a nutshell.
Yeah, I'll be excited to see what you and Dr. Enrico talk about with the gaming portion.
Yeah, I think that will be the next podcast after this one, so stay tuned.
Stay tuned for part 2.
Part 2.0.
Part 2.0. Dr. Mike will still be here. Have a good afternoon or day, morning.